And we are back. It has been a week since England's 4-0 at home defeat to Hungary. And Gareth Southgate still has a job. So the FA are going to back him. They're going to give him the opportunity to lead this team into the World Cup. And essentially he now has 2 more Nations League games against Italy and Germany to get it right. And over the course of the last week, I've had another little look back through all the different things that I think need to be sorted. And this video is going to be what I think England needs to do and what Gareth Southgate needs to do in order to get the best out of this team going into the World Cup. So, these are the 3 biggest problems England must fix before the World Cup. If you like what we do around here, please do consider dropping a like on the video, subscribing to the channel, and if you're feeling really nice, why not ring that bell as well, so you can get notified every time we upload. Number 3, Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, this isn't me saying per se that Trent Alexander-Arnold himself is the problem. It's more that this Trent Alexander-Arnold is not this Trent Alexander-Arnold. And that's quite frankly because this guy is not this guy. And Gareth Southgate really has no idea how to get the best out of Trent. So if we have a look at how Liverpool usually line up, this is the lineup that they use in the Champions League final. We know, because we've seen it enough times, how this sort of works. And when Trent does this, Henderson does this. And then even sometimes you'll find Trent popping into midfield positions like this where he can dictate the play. The purpose is he's developed this relationship with Henderson whereby Henderson knows if Trent's getting forward, he needs to cover for him. Equally, Konate will sometimes come over and Fabinho will drop into defence. It's all set up so Trent essentially has free rein down the right-hand side. And apart from when he's taking corners, you'll probably find him anywhere in this sort of area of the pitch. So he'll get all the way beyond Salah as he tucks in, but equally he'll come all the way back. If you look at how he played for England over the Nations League, this was the game that he played. It was only one game. It was against Hungary. He played for 60 minutes and got subbed off. And the reason for that was he was essentially trapped in this little box here. And every time that he tried to do what he normally does, he basically just ran into another player because there was no fluidity to the system. Gareth Southgate is so hung up on this idea that you have to have structure and balance that he doesn't allow for creativity. And because of that, poor old Trent was just, like I said, stuck in this box over on the right-hand side, barely was able to get on the ball, and then when he did get it, he was just asked to, be Trent, put crosses in. But he couldn't influence the game at all, and that is purely down to Gareth Southgate. And he needs to find a way to get more out of him. So, solution number 1, play Jordan Henderson. Now, I know what you're thinking. You, Mr. Anti-Jordan Henderson. I can imagine my mates are laughing right now. But we've got 2 games left before the World Cup. And I suggested in my video before the Nations League of a scenario where you play Reece James in centre midfield and Trent at right back and try and establish that same sort of relationship whereby Trent goes forward and James covers for him. But let's be honest, Gareth Southgate said himself that he gave Jordan Henderson a rest because of his age and because of the long season that Liverpool have had. Jordan Henderson is going to be in the World Cup squad. So why not just play him with Trent and just have them do their same old thing? Trent gets forward, Henderson covers for him. I know I have my reservations about Jordan Henderson, but at the end of the day, he is still a good player. He is good enough to play for England, and he knows how to get the best out of Trent Alexander-Arnold. So, for me, that would be the easiest solution to the problem. Solution number 2, however, would be to play Trent in midfield himself. Now, again, this sort of runs off the same sort of principle, whereby you play a Reece James or a Kyle Walker at right back, and then you just play Trent in that right side of midfield. Just sort of say to him, right, you are going to be that player, and you can allow the likes of Reece James and Kyle Walker to get forward, and then you cover for them at right back as and when required. I think it's going to be a slightly harder thing to do. I know everyone expects him to end up in midfield, but I think as long as Jurgen Klopp's in charge of Liverpool, this is how Liverpool are going to play, and Trent is always going to be the right back charging forward to play the balls in. I don't think there's ever going to be a scenario where Trent does start playing in midfield and then, again, like I say, with just 2 games left before the World Cup, I don't think now is the right sort of time to experiment with things like that, but I'm just going to throw it out there as another suggestion. And number 3, which unfortunately I think is the scenario that you're going to get at the World Cup, is don't play Trent. Now again, we've already seen this in regards to the second game that we played in the Nations League against Germany. It was tough opposition, so Gareth Southgate just played Kyle Walker. And I know Liverpool don't have that sort of luxury, and I know people go on about Trent's defending. And I'm one of those people that say Trent really isn't the best at one-on-one defending. But I'll be honest with you, everyone was expecting Vinicius Jr. to run riot in this Champions League final, and he didn't. He didn't get anything from Trent. And if you're going to pin the Vinicius Jr. goal on Trent Alexander-Arnold, you either A, have an agenda against Trent, or B, you don't recognise Van Dijk's defensive frailties when it comes to his own one-on-one defending. And that is that Valverde picked the ball up on the halfway line and Van Dijk backed off and backed off and backed off and backed off and backed off until eventually Valverde put the ball in and Vinicius scored. So, other than that moment, Trent was never really exposed for the entire 90 minutes. So, he has proven that he can defend against good opposition at the highest level. So, I don't see a reason why he can't play big games at right back, but obviously Liverpool don't have another world-class right back behind him, and arguably we have 2. So, unfortunately, I think that is the solution that Gareth Southgate will go for, and that Trent won't play. But for me, he should play. For now, it remains to be seen. Problem number 2, creativity from midfield. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there is only one person to blame for this, because there has been more than one person that has been playing in the creative midfield positions. But my word, has it been Mason Mount a lot of the time. I like Mason Mount. Don't get me wrong, I like Mason Mount. I think he's a good Premier League player, and I think he's an average international player. However, I look at all the options available. I look at literally all of these options available, and I just think that they all have more flair, more creativity, more drive, and arguably more consistency than Mason Mount. I know people like to say, oh, Mason Mount is Mr. Consistency, he always contributes, but he's just sort of there without doing an awful lot. He plays some good passes, he gets into some good areas, but I'm not being funny. He played the first 3 games in the Nations League, and like we said already, we didn't score at all. So he's not scored, he's not assisted, he's had chances and not taken them. Meanwhile, we've got all these players waiting in the wings that just aren't being given opportunities. And then we get to the final game, we're 2-0 down to Hungary, we need something to happen, and you look at the bench and you've got Phil Foden and Jack Grealish sitting there waiting to come on, and he puts on Mason Mount. I don't get it. We've got so much creativity available to us, and it's just always the same players. And I'll lump Calvin Phillips in there as well, because I just expect better from international players. I expect this more. Again, it's just that spark, that little bit of flair. So, solution number 1, stop starting Mason Mount. And it's as simple as that, really. Like, in my opinion, you can't start Mason Mount when this guy's available, and even this guy doesn't even get in the squad. And for me, he is a better player than Mason Mount. He's got more creativity, he's made more assists this season in the Premier League, and he's only a couple of goals behind him. I just think when you've got this much quality available, this much imagination is the word really I've been looking for, you can't play, for lack of better words, a basic player like Mason Mount. And I would still have Mason Mount in the squad. There is definitely a place for players like him. But when you've got these 3 available to you, all of them start in front of him, in my opinion. Solution number 2, play a different shape. Now, I've already talked about in the Trent bit how I think we should be incorporating the similar style of play, like using Jordan Henderson to move around with Trent like that. You don't need to have an attacking midfielder, a cam as it's always called on FIFA. It's sort of a position that's come out of nowhere in the last 20 years. You always used to have 2 up front or a striker and a centre forward. Now there has just become an obsession in modern day football that you have a cam. And I don't think you need it. The top teams don't play cams. They play creative midfielders. But they play them slightly deeper. You have two. Man City played De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva. Liverpool played Henderson and Thiago, and obviously the relationship with Trent. But again, that's what you do. You don't need to play a Mason Mount off the forward. You can put Henderson on the right-hand side and put a Foden or a Grealish or even like a Jude Bellingham or a James Ward-Prowse on that left-hand side who are going to be just a bit more creative, do some damage from midfield and then give more time and space to Kane and the two wide players. I just think that's the way we need to be looking, and we just need to be looking away from this idea of you play one central attacking midfielder and rely on the creativity of them, because it stifles Kane as well. You want Kane dropping into those pockets. So for me, that's the easiest solution to creativity in midfield, is just to play different midfielders that offer more creativity. And number one, game management. Now, obviously, we spoke about game management to a certain degree in the England-Hungary reaction video. Link to that will be available here. But, you know, and we spoke about the substitutions, and I can pop up on the screen now that slide that I showed the other day about how it's always the same like-for-like substitutions, and it's always about Southgate being reactive rather than proactive when it's not working. And look, don't get me wrong, managers at the highest level make like-for-like substitutions. Jurgen Klopp makes like-for-like substitutions. Pep Guardiola makes like-for-like substitutions. But they're always when the game plan is working. So, you know, Klopp sees this example. You take Mane off, you put Jota on. You know, you take Firmino off, you put Diaz on. And if the game's working, if the game plan is working. But if it's not, and in those games where they're lacking something different, he takes one of those forward players off, or he takes one of those midfielders off, and he puts Divock Origi on. And he offers something completely different. And it's never when they're chasing the game. It's always when it's level and the initial plan is not working. And for me, Gareth Southgate just doesn't have that. He just sort of goes, oh, well, this guy's not working. I've got all these brilliant players available to me, so I'll just take one off and put another one on and hope they'll do something different. And that's just not good management. Like, again, if it's a game that we are controlling, by all means do that. But these games, particularly over the last 2 weeks, the 4 games of the Nations League, we have not been in control of a single one of those games. And the only tactical changes that he's made has been in the Hungary game, where he went from a 4-3-3 to a 3-4-3. And how'd that work out for you? Because he doesn't understand what's going wrong until it's already gone wrong. So that's something he's going to have to drastically improve on. Otherwise, yet again, we're going to fall up coming short. So, to be quite honest with you, the only solution, sack Gareth Southgate. Now, obviously, we know that's not going to happen. You know, it's been a week. He's still in the job. So, unless something drastic off the pitch happens, Gareth Southgate will be in charge for the remaining games. So, what he's got to do is he's just got to get that little bit more book smart. Have some more conversations with Steve Holland. Have conversations with the managers. He needs to understand how to get the best out of his players and recognise when a particular player or a particular system isn't working, who needs to come on in their place to make a significant impact. I just think he needs to be a little bit braver. He's always been a safe manager. He was brought in at the time where we weren't a very good team and we needed that sort of defensive structure. And he brought that in and it's got us as far as it's gotten us. But now we're in a position where we have so much ability, so much available to us, that having that static blockade style of system just doesn't suit these players. There are players that play in world-class teams all the time that are constantly fluid and constantly moving around. And we're stifling them by playing this style of play. So if I'm Gareth Southgate, this is what I would now be doing for the 2 remaining fixtures and then the start of the World Cup. So to start off with, you build your team around who, in my opinion, are your 4 key players. And they are these 4 players here. Trent, Rice, Foden and Kane. For me, those are our best players in their respective positions. So these are the 4 players that, barring injury, anything could happen in the lead up to the World Cup. These will be the 4 players that, for absolute certain, are going to be starting the game. So from here, it's now about building the best possible team around them. So from what I've said already in this video, we'll start with Jordan Henderson. Because, as we've already established, he has that good relationship with Trent, which allows him to move in and out at will, which will get an awful lot more out of Trent. After that, you then have Fikayo Tomori, who is the best, in my opinion, at covering Trent. I don't think Kyle Walker can play out-and-out centre-back in a back 2. If he can, then fair play to him. Why not give it a go in those 2 games? But for me, Tomori is the quickest. He is the best possible player available to cover Trent in situations where he goes forward and Henderson isn't quite necessarily there to cover. Finally, at right wing, you then have Saka or Bowen, which is then like your Mohamed Salah, the left footer that's going to cut in and allow Trent to run around the outside of them. From there, I think you then have to look at how you're going to play Phil Foden. So you've got 2 options for Foden. You either stick him out on the left-hand side or you stick him in the midfield. And for me, this is where we come back to our second problem of creativity from midfield. I think you can play Phil Foden there. Play him as the other player in midfield where he can get on the ball, run at players, work his magic. They call him the Stockport Iniesta. Iniesta was at his best when he played right there. So that is where I would play Phil Foden. Get him on the ball, get him turning players, flair, creativity, imagination. And then from there, it's then about the left winger. And annoyingly, right now, that's Raheem Sterling. Now, there is a small hope in my mind as a Manchester United fan that a certain someone may rediscover their form, in which case I would have them there. And the importance of having it like this is because you need pace in behind. This is where we're trying to now get the most out of Harry Kane, where he drops off the front like he does for Spurs, and you need the runners like Kulusevski and like Son running in behind. So you get your quickest players, which in my opinion are Saka and Sterling, or Rashford if he's, back, but remains to be seen. And you have them running in behind. So all that really remains is now that left-hand side of the pitch. And for me, you just go for whoever's in form. I'm still going Nick Pope in goal. I don't care what anyone says. Nick Pope is England's best goalkeeper. He should start in goal. We know it'll be Jordan Pickford, unless injuries and whatnot. But for me, Nick Pope's in goal. And then the centre-back and the left-back's whoever's in form. I don't care if that's Maguire, John Stones, Craig Dawson. I would probably care if it was Mings or Cody. But you just play the one who's in form. It's going to be the World Cup. It's so important to pick your best players at that moment in time. If Maguire's having another mare, absolutely not. Get him nowhere near the squad. And then left back as well. I don't care if it's Chilwell, Luke Shaw, Tariq Mitchell, Ryan Sessegnon, Rico Henry. If they're playing well and they can go down that left-hand side the same way Trent can go down that right-hand side, that's who needs to be playing. And then from there, the whole system just develops perfectly. So you have Kane dropping in off the front like this, then Saka and Sterling running behind, which then creates space for the right back and the left back to get forward, and then you get the rotation of Henderson coming in and out, or you have Rice dropping in and the centre backs going out wide. And it all makes sense to me. I don't understand what's so difficult about this. Yes, like we say, injuries could play a factor, but if everyone's available, surely this is how we should be playing, because it just gets the best out of our most important players. And you'll look on here, and the likes of Jack Grealish, Jadon Sancho, Maddison, Barnes, even the likes of Mount, Gallagher, Bellingham. You've then got all of them to call from the bench, and they all offer something different. So if Foden is having a bad game, put Grealish on. Or if we're lacking that physicality in midfield, take a Sterling off, put Foden further forward, put Bellingham on in midfield. Reece James as well. Try Trent in midfield, put Reece James at right back. There are so many different ways that this can play. And I don't think it would take too much effort for us to get there. But these right now are the 3 biggest issues that we are facing. And yeah, that's how I would solve them. So again, please drop a like if you agree with me. Let me know down in the comments what you would do. Please consider subscribing if you are new around here. And I will see you very, very soon. Thank you very much for watching.